You're listening to The Trouble with Angels, Season 2, Episode 5, Chapter 14. I need to speak to the manager of existence because, honey, you don't deserve the headache I'm about to give someone. Heaven has fluorescent lighting, laminated flowcharts, and the kind of help desk smile that makes you want to apologize for having pores. Hannah shows up with grief, receipts, and a fully hydrated willingness to escalate. With Bob trying to keep the peace, and failing, Miss Lavinia serving mints like emotional PPE, and a mid-level clerk named Adil quietly collecting evidence. Chapter 14 becomes a wholly customer service nightmare, where the signage has opinions, the system has feelings, and the question, who's in charge, starts sounding a lot like a threat. In this episode, spoiler-free, a heavenly reception desk that treats seeing God like a routing request. The most terrifying phrase in existence, please select one. Miss Lavinia, patron saint of mints, paperwork, and telling the truth nicely. Adil at window 3, warm, competent, and suspicious in the best way. Bureaucracy so advanced it starts generating acting coverage for the divine. A confrontation with oversight that turns grief into a compliance issue, and Hannah refuses. Doors, keys, and the moment being polite stops being survival. And the Silver City itself getting very helpful. Quick content advisory for this chapter. Mentions of grief and loss, including multiple deaths, emotional overwhelm, institutional gaslighting, and spiritual bypassing. Tone policing, coercive bureaucracy, and a confrontation with authority that includes raised voices and intense emotional tension. No gore. Remember that you can listen to this podcast and all our others wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and beyond. And if you want more of my audio stories, you can listen to Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter and Boarding School Murder Mystery. Links are in the show notes because I would never send you into the wild without proper documentation. Subscribe for our paperwork and stories, chapters, audio updates, and assorted cosmic memos arriving via your inbox. Compliance is optional, but encouraged at glorythink.substack.com. And if you want to help fund writing time, audio production, and whatever fresh nonsense the afterlife approves of next, you can become a financial booster. Bob keeps receipts on our Coffee, Venmo, and Cash App are linked in the show notes. Help this story keep finding its people. Tap the heart button, engagement is magic. Leave a comment or a review. Tell me what sign in the Silver City would have ended you on sight, or what your angry mortal with documentation checkbox would say. And share this episode with a friend who loves cosmic bureaucracy, dark comedy tenderness, speak to the manager energy, and stories where grief refuses to be turned into a lesson plan. Your support keeps indie storytelling caffeinated, chaotic, and just celestial enough. New here? Start with Season 1, Episode 1. It's the cleanest on-ramp. Want the newest arc? Start with Season 2, Episode 1. Want a low-pressure taste test? Pick any title that vibes with you, then circle back to the start when you're hooked. And remember, grief isn't a compliance issue, no matter how many forms they hand you. Previously, on The Trouble with Angels, Michael dragged Gabriel into a Ways and Means reunion that ran on radical tenderness and laminated schedules. Gabriel got ambushed by Junie, age 5, CEO energy, clipboard included, and remembered what kindness feels like when it's organized on purpose. And when the fireworks faded, something shifted, something that didn't belong, and the universe, as always, pretends it's just a glitch. I need to speak to the manager of existence because, honey, you don't deserve the headache I'm about to give someone. By Glory Think. The Silver City didn't feel like a place so much as a policy someone had successfully convinced reality to sign. Everything was bright in the way that offices are bright when they're trying to convince you you're safe. Long corridors, clean lines, architectural confidence that whispered, nothing bad can happen here because we have a binder for that. Bob walked beside me like a man escorting someone through a family reunion where everyone has opinions and half of them are laminated. Just keep your voice normal. Like I was about to set a rabbit loose in a bank. I have one voice, I said. It's my normal voice. It's just accurate. He made a small sound that could have been a laugh if you squinted at it from far away. We reached the reception desk, not a throne, not a corrugated monument, a help desk. If heaven was a feeling, it was, please take a number. The angel behind the desk looked up, and her face lit like the warmest customer service script in creation. Beautiful in a way that made my human brain want to apologize for having pores. "Oh, hello, darling Bob," she said, delighted. "It's so blessed to see you after so long. How may I be of service to you?" Bob smiled like this was an old joke they'd been telling each other for 10,000 years. "Greetings, gorgeous Danae," he said, soft and familiar, like he was greeting a beloved coworker, and not someone who could probably rearrange my atoms into a tasteful paperweight. "My friend Hannah has a request for you." He stepped half a pace back, gentle, respectful, also very clearly, "Your turn, kid." Every cell in my body remembered every time I've been told to calm down, be polite, don't make it weird, don't make them mad, don't make it harder. I cleared my throat. Yes, I said as I could hear the tremor of my own exhaustion inside the syllables. "I would like to see God." Danae blinked. Not shocked, not offended. Just the way a receptionist blinks when you ask for the CEO without knowing the CEO's assistant's name. "Of course, dear daughter of Hashem," she said gently. "May I ask what department you're trying to reach God through?" I stared at her. I could see out of the corner of my eye Bob's shoulders slightly stiffen, and in that moment I understood the shape of my problem. God wasn't missing. God was on a routing tree. Danae's smile brightened the way a screen brightens when it's about to time out on you. "Wonderful," she said, as if I'd asked for directions to the restroom. "We love clarity. So, when you say you'd like to see God, are we talking God for policy, God for permissions, God for comfort, or God for complaints?" I stared. Bob made a tiny polite cough that said, "Be nice. Also, I warned you." "I'm sorry," I said. "There are versions?" "Oh, yes," Danae said, delighted. "The Lord has a robust office footprint. One might even say a strategic presence. We're very proud." She reached under the desk and produced a laminated flowchart the size of a small dining table. It unfurled with the smooth inevitability of doom. Across the top, in crisp silver letters, "Welcome. Who are you trying to see today?" Under that, branching boxes. God General Inquiries, God Existence Maintenance, God Miracles and Exceptions, God Grief and Human Affairs, God Creative Complaints / Universe Feedback, God Emergency Only, and then, in a smaller box in the corner, like a side quest, God Theater Tech Support. Danae beamed. "Isn't it friendly? We redid it after the last, mortal civilization collapse. Turns out people like knowing their options." I leaned in despite myself. "Okay," I said. "Creative Complaints / Universe Feedback. That one." Bob made a noise like he wanted to be anywhere else. "Oh, excellent choice," Danae said warmly. "You'll want God's office in Ways and Means for that." "Ways and Means?" I repeated. "Yes," Danae said, nodding like this was obvious. "Ways handles the conceptual pathway. Means handles implementation, budget, and," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "the emotional labor." "Danae," Bob warned softly. She waved him off with a fond little flick. "Bob, sweetheart, don't pretend emotional labor doesn't have a spreadsheet. It does. I've seen it. It has tabs." Then she turned back to me, still radiant. "So, you'll go down this corridor, past upper administration, take a left at Your Afterlife Rehabilitation and Theater Tech, go through the door marked Authorized Personnel Only / Also Please Hydrate, and check in at the Ways and Means sub-reception." I blinked. "Sub-reception?" "Mm-hmm," she said. "That's where routing happens. God's office is technically present in every department, but appointments are coordinated through the relevant desk. Keeps things tidy." Bob, very gently, said, "Is God in the Ways and Means office today?" Danae's smile stayed perfect. Her fingers tapped the air like she was clicking an invisible mouth. "Oh," she said brightly, "let's see. God is currently marked as..." She paused, squinted at nothing, then nodded with professional cheer. "Out of the office." My silence lasted long enough to become a weather pattern. "Out of the office," I repeated. Yes, she said, still warm. But don't worry, the auto-routing system is very robust. It will send you to the next most appropriate office where God is available. Bob's lips tightened across his face. And where, he said carefully, does the auto-routing system send someone who would like to see God? Danae brightened again. Oh, that depends. Are you up? She slid me another laminated card. Please select one. Bereaved mortal, confused mortal, angry mortal with documentation, catastrophically polite mortal, other please specify. I looked at angry mortal with documentation and felt my soul sit up straighter. Bob glanced at me, eyes soft, and mouthed, please don't. I checked the box. Danae's eyes sparkled. Oh, darling, we love documentation. Then she leaned in confidential as a secret menu. And between you and me, she whispered, looking at my face like she could read every sleepless night right off it. Angry mortals with documentation get processed a lot faster than angry mortals without it. Bob made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a prayer. Danae straightened. Okay, I'm printing you a routing slip. You'll need it at each desk, and do keep it visible. Security gets nervous when people show up with feelings and no paperwork. A slot in the desk whirred and produced a long receipt-like strip of paper that immediately made me want to lie down. Across the top, in cheerful font, welcome to your request. Under it, request, see God, category, angry mortal with documentation, current status, routing. At the bottom, in bold, please do not lose this receipt. It is the only proof of your existence. I stared at it, then looked up at Danae. Is that a joke? I asked. Danae smiled in a way that said, I'm not allowed to answer that honestly. Bob patted my shoulder once very lightly. Come on, he murmured, ways and means. And we walked away holding my proof of existence receipt like it was a boarding pass to the apocalypse. The signage had opinions. The corridor looked like someone had asked an architect to design tranquility and then threaten them with a performance review. The walls were smooth, pale, aggressively clean. Clean in the way a place is clean when it's trying to convince you it has never known chaos. The lighting was soft but bright enough to make secrets feel nervous. And the signage? The signage had opinions. Every 10 feet, another sleek plaque in brushed metal and corporate optimism. Silver City Upper Administration, please have your purpose ready. Below in smaller letters, if you don't know your purpose, please proceed to purpose allocation wing C. Bob didn't even look at it. He walked like he'd seen this sign so many times it become wallpaper in his soul. I stopped dead. Purpose allocation? I whispered. Bob kept walking. Don't. That's not a department, I said, hustling to catch up. That's a threat. He gave me a look. Hannah. We passed a water station. Not a fountain. A station. Emotional support water. Hydrate before you escalate. Below, if you have escalated, please hydrate anyway. I stared at it like it had personally insulted my mother. This place is weaponizing self-care, I said. That's art. Bob's tone stayed gentle, like he was handling a very reactive animal. It's well-intentioned. We reached a junction where the hallway forked. Left, ways and means, routing / approvals. If you're here, someone already said no. Right. Unauthorized existential inquiries. You are lost. Please stop looking. I turned to Bob. I feel like that second one is personally for me, I said. Bob took a slow breath like he was counting to 10 in a language older than my species. We go left, he said. And as we walked under ways and means, a new sign appeared. Literally clicked into place on the wall with a cheerful little snick, like the building had been waiting for us. Welcome, Hannah. Please lower your expectations. I stopped. I stared. I looked at Bob. Bob stared straight ahead, face set in the bland neutrality of someone who had survived 3 eons of systems that pretend not to see you while you're reading your name off a screen. I didn't do that, he murmured. No, I said softly, holding my receipt like a talisman, but it did. A faint sound drifted from somewhere distant, like a printer warming up in another room. The building preparing to process me. Hydrate before you escalate, I muttered. Bob reached out and, without looking at me, pressed a tiny paper cup of water into my hand like an offering. "Please," he said. And I drank, because if I was going to speak to the manager of existence, I was going to do it with fully moisturized rage. Ways and Means endured. Ways and Means didn't shine. It endured. The lighting softened into something older and yellower, like bulbs replaced 1,000 times by somebody who sighed every time they climbed the ladder. The floor wasn't marble. It was scuffed, hard-working tile, the kind you see in county buildings and church kitchens. Somewhere, faintly, a ceiling fan tried its best. There was even a smell. Not dirty, not unpleasant, just paper, old folders, pencil shavings, the ghost of coffee that had been warmed and rewarmed since the beginning of time itself. Behind a long wooden counter that looked like it had been built when heaven still had handwritten ledgers, sat an angel with reading glasses perched on the very end of her nose, like they were there to judge the existence of your handwriting. She looked up and her face lit with immediate recognition. "Well, I'll be," she said, voice warm as cornbread, "if it isn't darling Bob." Bob's shoulders loosened 1 millimeter, the closest thing to relief I'd seen out of him all day. "Miss Lavinia," he said, respectful fun. "Good to see you." Miss Lavinia had glowing walnut-brown skin, amber iridescent eyes, metallic silver hair braided into a goddess halo, cream silk blouse, black pearls, the kind of gentility that could bless you and read you for filth in the same breath. She slid a glass jar of mints forward like this was a ritual. "Take one, baby," she said to me without asking who I was. "You look like you came in here with your jaw clenched so tight you could crack a pearl." I started. "Go on," she insisted gently. "Nobody thinks straight when their blood sugar's bottoming." I took a mint. It tasted like hospitality and being seen. Miss Lavinia's gaze flicked to Bob. "Now you know I love you, Bob," she said, "but you have brought me a mortal." Bob didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. He set my receipt on the counter like an offering. Miss Lavinia picked it up, held it at arm's length, and made a face. "Oh, Danae gave you the long one," she said, sympathetic. "Bless." I blinked. "There are short ones?" "Oh, sure," Miss Lavinia said. "Short ones are for folks with simple requests. You, however," she glanced at me over her glasses, "have spirit. That always prints extra." Bob's posture shifted like he wanted to hide. Miss Lavinia tapped the receipt with one nail. "Now," she said, "what exactly are we trying to do today?" I swallowed. "I want to see God," I said. "Directly, not routed, not triaged, not sent to an office with a sign that tells me to lower my expectations." Miss Lavinia nodded slowly like I just told her why I came down to her office in the first place. "Mm-hmm," she said. "And what would you like to see God about?" I opened my mouth. Everything in me tried to say everything. Bob's hand hovered near my elbow, not controlling, steadying. Like he knew the words were a stampede. I forced one breath. "Everyone I love died, all in 1 week," I said, voice low. "And the universe keeps acting like that's normal. Like it's fine. Like there's nothing to talk about." Miss Lavinia didn't flinch. Her face didn't go stiff with policy. She just softened. "Oh, baby," she said quietly. Then, because she was still a clerk in an office and still professional, she reached for a rubber stamp the size of my fist and stamped my receipt with a satisfying thunk. Across it appeared, "Noted." I stared at that word like it was a miracle all on its own. "Now," Miss Lavinia continued businesslike, "I can route you toward one of God's departmental offices." "That's what Danae said," I replied, trying to keep my tone from turning into a knife. "Mm-hmm," Miss Lavinia said. "Danae is sweet. Danae also believes the system is friendlier than it is sometimes." She leaned forward, voice lowering into courthouse clerk hush. "Here's the thing," she said. "God's office is present in every department. Has been for..." She made a vague gesture that meant since before time learned how to count itself. But God's availability, she went on, is a separate issue. I felt my stomach tighten. So I said, which office is God in? Miss Lavinia pressed her lips together like she was trying not to say something that would get her written up. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a worn little ledger, handwritten, old enough to have watched civilizations rise and fall and still have opinions about their penmanship. She ran a finger down the page. She murmured, God, God, God. Bob went very still. Miss Lavinia made a quiet sound, half sigh, half Lord have mercy, and snapped the ledger shut. Well, she said brightly, too brightly, would you look at that? My skin prickled. What? God is marked as out of office in ways, she said, and out of office in means. I stared. Bob's posture tightened. Don't you worry, sugar, Miss Lavinia continued gently. That don't mean you can't get answers. It just means we're going to have to do this the way the system likes. And what way is that? I asked. Miss Lavinia slid a form toward me. It was yellowed, slightly curled at the edges like it had been photocopied so many times the machine had started praying. Form W&M-1, request for divine audience. Please print neatly. Eternity is long, but our patience is not. There were boxes. So many boxes. I stared at it like it had teeth. Miss Lavinia pushed the mint jar closer like it was emotional PPE. Go on, she said kindly. Check your boxes. We'll get you started. I looked at Bob. Bob looked at Miss Lavinia. And Miss Lavinia looked at Bob like she already knew what he was trying not to admit. And Bob, she said, still gentle, you didn't bring her here because you like paperwork. Bob didn't answer. Miss Lavinia nodded like his silence told her everything. She said. That's what I thought. Then she smiled again, sweet as pie, and lowered her voice. Baby, she said, I'm not saying the hoops are suspicious. She tapped the form once, gentle. I'm just saying, you keep your eyes open while you jump. She handed me the pen like it was both an instrument and a warning. The sponsor line. The pen scratched like it resented being asked to participate in my emotions. Miss Lavinia nudged her glasses down her nose another quarter inch. The universal posture of, all right, baby, tell me the truth, but write it legible. Name, she said, tapping the first box. I blinked. You know my name. The hallway had a sign. She said, unbothered. But the hallway is nosy. I'm official. I wrote Hannah in block letters that looked like I was already done with this mishigas. Next line. Current status. Living, deceased, complicated, other. Please explain. My pen hovered. Miss Lavinia leaned in. Don't you check complicated unless you want a whole other stack. It sounds cute, but it's a trap. I checked deceased, like it might change its mind if I hesitated. Miss Lavinia's gaze flicked to Bob, fond, then sharp. And you, she asked him, are you staying out of trouble, or are you still acting like you're the only grown-up in a house full of toddlers with matches? Bob smiled politely, real but tired. Yes, ma'am, he said. Miss Lavinia snorted. That's not an answer. Bob rolled his shoulder. No, ma'am. There it is, she said, please. Then nodded at me again. Reason for request. The checkbox list stared back. Personal grief. Cosmic grief. Existential complaint. Manager of existence escalation. Other. Attach additional paperwork. I want to check all of them, I admitted. I know you do, Miss Lavinia said gently, but you check one and write the rest in the margins like a proper human. I checked manager of existence escalation first, because honesty is a kind of violence sometimes. Miss Lavinia's eyebrows rose a fraction, not disapproval, impressed. Well, she said, okay then, coming in hot. Is that bad? I asked. It's not bad, she said. It's loud, and loud gets attention. And attention gets answers? Miss Lavinia smiled without showing teeth. Attention gets response. She let that sit, then pointed at required attachments, proof of life, supporting witness statement, timeline of events, prior attempts through proper channels, additional notes, optional but encouraged. I stared at proof of loss until the letters blurred. I'm sorry, I said, voice too tight. What is proof of loss? Am I supposed to bring death certificates to heaven? Miss Lavinia leaned forward into a hush. No, baby, she said. We don't need a certificate. We need a reference point. Something the system can hook its little fingers into. That feels evil, I said. It's not evil, she replied. It's lazy. She nodded at the prior attempts line. Check that. Danae's routing counts. I checked it with too much force. And for proof of loss, Miss Lavinia said softer, you write one sentence. Just one. Something true. Something the system can't argue with. My throat tightened. I wrote slowly, I loved them all. I still do. The sentence sat on the page like a candle. Miss Lavinia nodded once, satisfied, then stamped my form. Thunk. Pending review. I swallowed. Now what? Miss Lavinia's smile turned sweet again. Now, she said, we need a sponsor signature. Bob lifted his head. Sponsor? Somebody with clearance has to sign that they're escorting you through the process, she said. Then, gentle but edged, she looked at Bob. And before you volunteer, you need to decide whether you want this system to notice you again. Because in the Silver City, being seen was never neutral. And the hoops suddenly didn't feel like kindness. They felt like a net. Bob's pencil hovered over the sponsor line like it weighed 1,000 years. Miss Lavinia watched him, calm as only someone behind a counter for eternity can be calm. Then she sighed, quiet as a screen door closing. She said, I was hoping you'd hesitate. Bob blinked. You were? Yes, she said, affectionate and firm at once. Because if you sign that, every section leader from here to upper admin is going to get a little ping that says Bob is moving again. And half of them are going to act like they're happy to see you. And the other half are going to start locking cabinets. Why would they lock cabinets? I asked. Miss Lavinia turned her gaze to me. Because cabinets hold the parts of the truth that don't look good under fluorescent light. Bob didn't sign. Miss Lavinia nodded like she just watched him make a painful but wise choice. Okay, she said, briskly sliding a small card across the table. Adil, Deputy Routing Coordinator, Ways and Means, Clearance, Tier 6, Desk, Back Hall, Window 3. Bob frowned. Adil? Miss Lavinia said. Mid-level, high enough to sign, low enough to still have a conscience that ain't been polished into a mirror. Bob's mouth tightened. They're a bureaucrat. So am I, Miss Lavinia said, unimpressed, and yet here I am feeding y'all mints and trying to keep you from getting swallowed alive. There. Miss Lavinia leaned in, voice dropping. Adil's been watching the BS, she said. They've been watching it for a while, and they don't like it. What kind of BS? I asked. Miss Lavinia looked at Bob. The kind where folks who shouldn't be making decisions are making decisions, she said. The kind where offices stay assigned on paper while somebody else is doing the signings. The kind where policies keep getting updated and nobody can tell you who authorized the update. Bob went still. And Adil noticed? Adil noticed, Miss Lavinia confirmed. And Adil started keeping notes. I blinked. People keep notes in heaven? Miss Lavinia gave me a slow look. Baby, people keep notes in church. She slid my form back to me and pointed at the sponsor line. Write their name in pencil, she instructed. Miss Lavinia's eyes flicked to his hand. Yes, the pencil in your hand, Bob, she said. Bob froze. I looked at Bob, then the sponsor line, then back at Bob. You're the pencil guy, I said slowly. Bob looked like he'd like to evaporate. Miss Lavinia's smile widened. Oh, honey, you have no idea. Bob leaned in and wrote, careful and neat, Adil, Tier 6, sponsor. It felt like we committed a felony with stationery. Miss Lavinia stamped it, authorized for escort, limited. She tapped the paper once. Now, when you go see Adil, she said, you let them do the talking first. Why? Bob asked. Because if you start talking, Miss Lavinia said. Everybody's going to start listening, and we don't want everybody. She looked at me. We want Adil. Back hall, window 3. Back hall, window 3 looked like the part of the courthouse nobody remodeled because everybody quietly agreed it didn't need it. Chipped paint, stacks of ledgers, a half-dead plant still alive out of spite, a ceiling fan turning slowly enough to be philosophical. And before we even rounded the corner, we heard a voice, warm, chatty, carrying on like the air itself was a coworker. No, see, that's exactly what I'm saying, the voice insisted. You cannot file a miracle under miscellaneous just because it didn't come with a receipt. That's how you end up with Destiny and the Lost and Found. We reached window 3. Not a window to the outside, one of those half windows in a wooden partition with a sliding glass pane and a little speaker grill like you were about to ask for a marriage license. The angel leaned on the counter inside, glasses shoved up into their hair like they'd forgotten they were there. Their smile arrived before the rest of their face. They looked up. Their eyes landed on Bob. And the expression that crossed their face was so purely delighted, it almost made me laugh. Oh my, they breathed, then caught themselves. Oh my goodness. Bob went still. Adil? Adil pressed a hand to their chest, reverence and gossip in one motion. It is so blessed to see you in the flesh, Adil said, then immediately warm and practical. Hi, hello, welcome. I'm Adil. Can I offer you some fresh fruit? They slid a bowl across with a little flourish. Beautiful fruit, like they'd personally defeated scarcity. I fetch it regularly from my favorite little market near Morocco, Adil added. Like this explained both the fruit and the meaning of life. I took a few grapes on reflex. Thank you. Bob didn't. Bob watched Adil, like he was trying to decide whether this would be easy or dangerous. Adil noticed, of course. Oh, don't look at me like that, they said amused. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to prevent it from becoming structural. Bob's stance shifted. You're on sponsor clearance? Adil's gaze flicked to my form like the paper was a friend they'd known for a long time. Oh, they said brightly. You're the angry mortal with documentation. I froze. How did you... It prints differently, Adil said. Longer, spikier. The system pretends it's neutral, but it gets very aware when someone shows up with facts and feelings. They leaned forward, dropping their voice, like this was just between us. And my friend, they added, good. Bob's gaze sharpened. Adil held up a calming hand, still smiling. Okay. I am not trying to start a civil war. I don't have the energy. I'm older than I look. I remember when the Earth's sun was just a little ball of energy. I'm simply invested in the continued integrity of existence. They angled their head toward Bob, eyes sparkling. And I am a low-key super fan of Bob's. Bob's expression barely shifted, but discomfort flickered in it like a candle. I'm not, Bob began. Adil waved him off. You don't have to be anything. You are something. That's the wonderful thing. Then softer. You show up. You do the glamorous, the unglamorous work. You keep people from falling through cracks. Sometimes literally. Adil's gaze slid to me, gentle. And you are in pain, they said. And you brought your pain to the Silver City instead of swallowing it alone, which, a small reverent motion, is one of the bravest things a human can do in a system that thrives on you quietly disappearing. I'm not brave, I said. I'm just done. Adil smiled like they respected that more than bravery. Same, they said. Then they scanned my form, quick, thorough, respectful. So, they said, Miss Lavinia sent you because Bob didn't want to light up every notification bell in the county, huh? Bob's eyes narrowed. Adil met his gaze without flinching. Bob, darling, I adore you, but when you move, the building gossips. It watches you like a hawk watches a mouse who's learned how to read. Bob's voice was low. Why are you helping? Adil's smile morphed into honesty. Because I've been here, they said, tapping the counter, watching mid-level management treat temporary authority like a crown, watching policies change without anyone saying who authorized the update, watching people get rerouted until they stop asking questions. They inhaled careful. I like harmony, they said. I like things working. But when working means people getting quietly erased, that's not harmony. That's rot with good lighting. Bob made a small grunt. Adil brightened a notch, still warm, still practical. So, we're going to do this clean, they said, correctly. We're going to give the system no excuse to pretend it didn't hear you. They pointed at my form. You checked Manager of Existence, Adil said, impressed. Bold. Accurate, I muttered. Adil nodded. Love accuracy. They slid the glass pane open a few inches, enough to pass papers, enough to feel like a threshold. Here's what I can do, Adil said. I can sponsor you as Tier 6 in Ways and Means, which means we can route you to the appropriate office. And unofficially? Bob asked. Adil smiled, soft, bright. Unofficially, they said, I can tell you who's been signing in whose absence. I can tell you what's normal, what's new, and which hoops are real and which hoops are designed. Then, gently, but I'm not blowing a trumpet in the hallway. I'm not accusing anyone loudly. I'm not starting a fight unless the cause is worth the fallout. Bob's face didn't change. And you think this is? Adil held his gaze. I think a grieving human asking to be witnessed is always worth it, they said quietly. Then warm again to me. All right, friend, let's get you in the system. They picked up a stamp. Tell me, they said softly, who are we escalating on today? You've been listening to The Trouble with Angels by Glory Fink. If you're listening with grief in your hands, I'm glad you're here. You don't have to muscle through this alone. You deserve the care that doesn't ask you to shrink to receive it. If you're in the U.S. or Canada, you can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. In the United Kingdom and Republic of Ireland, Samaritans are available at 116-123. In Australia, Lifeline is 131114. And if you're in immediate danger, please call your local emergency number. And if you want to help this story keep finding its people, you could tap the heart button, engagement is magic, leave a comment. Miss Lavinia will stamp it approved and Adil will file it as evidence. Or you could even toss a coin in our coffee fund, divine contributions, always welcome, on Ko-fi, Venmo, and Cash App, links in show notes. The Trouble with Angels at Glorious Magazine, link in show notes, or just go to gloryfink.substack.com. Check out Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe, link in show notes, go to coffeebunny.substack.com. And you can find me, Glory Fink, as @GloryWritesTheBlues on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, TikTok, and Threads. And hey, Chapter 14 Part 2 drops next, because Hannah just learned the Silver City doesn't answer questions. It routes them. And the second you ask for the Manager of Existence, the whole building starts acting like you pulled a fire alarm with your bare hands. So if you felt that hallway tighten, if you heard the politeness get sharp, good. That means you're paying attention. In Part 2, the help desk smile turns into tone policing. Upper administration tries to stabilize grief like it's a software bug. And Hannah decides she's done being managed. All right. Wrap up in your cozy blanket, guard your heart, and do not let heaven tone police your grief. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in Chapter 14, Part 2. Goodbye!